My name is Isabella, and I thought turning 34 would feel like stepping into a new chapter of my life, like a reward for all the years of sacrifice and late nights at the office. I had pictured it so clearly, the laughter of friends, the soft glow of candles, a perfectly tailored dress hugging my frame as I sat in the private dining room of one of Chicago's finest restaurants. For weeks, maybe even months, I clung to that vision. It was supposed to be a night that finally celebrated me. But what I got instead was something else entirely. I remember standing in front of the mirror that evening, smoothing down the cream silk dress I had worked so hard to buy. Stella McCartney. I still can't believe I bought it. The kind of dress I used to look at in glossy fashion magazines thinking one day if I work hard enough. And I did. I put in the hours, climbed the ladder, paid my dues, and here it was mine. I whispered to myself, "You deserve this, Isabella. You've earned it." The restaurant was everything I had hoped for. Alenia. Just saying the name made me feel like I belonged to some rarefied circle of people who appreciated the best life could offer. The host greeted me warmly, took one look at my reservation, and led me toward the private dining room. Candles flickered on every table, the faint smell of truffle and seared steak drifted through the air. I felt like the main character in my own story for once. My friends arrived first: Kate, Jasmine, Daniel, and Ryan. People who knew me beyond the labels of sister, daughter, aunt. They hugged me, their eyes lighting up when they saw the dress. "You look stunning," Kate whispered in my ear, squeezing my hand. For a moment, I believed it was all going to be perfect. But then there was the waiting. I glanced at my phone every few minutes. My family was supposed to be there at 6:30 sharp. At 7:15, still nothing. The first course arrived, delicate little amuse-bouche plated like art. I tried to laugh along with my friends, sip the champagne they ordered, but inside my chest tightened. Are they even coming? Did Clara forget? Did Mom decide it wasn't worth the trip? At 7:45, just as the second course was being placed in front of us, the door opened. Clara swept in first, her heels clicking against the polished floor, followed by Olivia, who was glued to her phone. My mother, Margaret, trailed behind, her expression unreadable. "There you are," I said, standing quickly, trying to sound cheerful. Clara shrugged, tossing her hair back. "Traffic. You know how it is. I wanted to say you could have left earlier. You knew this mattered to me." But instead, I smiled, ushering them to their seats. Olivia barely looked up. She slumped in her chair, crossed her arms, and muttered, "Nice place. Expensive." I swallowed the sting. It's my treat. I wanted tonight to be special. Dinner moved forward, though the energy was different now. My friends asked thoughtful questions about work, about life in the city. Clara interrupted with sarcastic comments. "Must be nice having time for fancy dinners," she said at one point, rolling her eyes. "Some of us have real responsibilities." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, but I forced a laugh. "I work hard too, Clara. You know that." The silence that followed was suffocating. Then came the gifts. My friends had wrapped their presents beautifully, little details that showed how much they cared. A leather-bound journal from Kate, a delicate necklace from Jasmine, a set of artisanal teas from Daniel. Thoughtful, personal. Clara slid a plastic shopping bag across the table. Inside was a candle still in its clearance, wrapping the $10 price tag clinging to the bottom. "Happy birthday," she said flatly. I forced a smile. "Thank you, it's lovely." Olivia snorted. "Pretend harder, Aunt Isabella. Maybe we'll believe you actually like it." My friends exchanged uneasy glances. I wanted to crawl out of my own skin. And then it happened. The moment I'll never forget. Olivia leaned back in her chair, gripping her glass of cranberry mocktail so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her eyes bored into me, filled with a venom that felt far older than 17. "You know what I think of all this," she said loudly, her voice slicing through the hum of the restaurant. "Your fancy dress, your fancy life this whole fake birthday." Before I could answer, she flung the glass forward. The red liquid arced through the air, time slowing to a cruel crawl. I felt the cold splash against my chest, saw the stain bloom across the silk, like blood spreading through water. Gasps filled the room. The servers froze, unsure of what to do. And then Olivia smirked. "Now you look as cheap as you really are." I stood there drenched, humiliated, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. For a split second, I thought I might scream, cry, or collapse, but I didn't. I took a breath, steadied my voice, and said, "Thank you for coming. That's all." My family left shortly after walking out as if they had won some unspoken battle. I remained, red liquid dripping from my ruined dress onto the white tablecloth, surrounded by friends who didn't know what to say. When the night finally ended, I went home, sat on my couch, still wearing the stained dress, and stared at nothing. My phone buzzed with messages from friends checking in, but I couldn't answer. All I could think was, why do I let them treat me this way? Why have I spent my entire life proving myself to people who will never care? That night I promised myself something would change, but promises are easy. Keeping them, that's the hard part. I don't even know how long I sat there on my couch that night, staring at the faint red stains spreading across my dress. The silk clung uncomfortably to my skin, the scent of cranberry syrupy and sour under the apartment lights. I should have taken it off immediately, thrown it into the dry cleaning bag, tried to save what I could. But I didn't move. I couldn't. My body felt heavy, my mind replaying the scene over and over, the look on Olivia's face, that smug twist of her lips. My mother's approving nod. Clara's silence that was louder than words. "Why?" I whispered to myself. My voice cracked in the quiet of the room. Why did it hurt so much when I knew this was who they were? Why was I still surprised after all these years? I thought about my childhood. Piano recitals where my fingers danced perfectly across the keys, only to earn a distracted niece job from Mom. Meanwhile, Clara stumbled through her song, and Mom would clap like she'd just witnessed a miracle. That pattern had never changed. No matter how hard I worked, no matter what I achieved, Clara was always the one to be comforted, encouraged, praised. And Olivia, she had learned the lesson well. I pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes until I saw bursts of light behind my eyelids. "You're 34 years old, Isabella. Why are you still begging for their approval?" I reached for my phone more out of reflex than desire. Notifications flooded the screen, text from Kate. "Are you okay? Want me to come over from Daniel?" That was inexcusable. "You don't deserve that." Even Jasmine sent a simple heart emoji, her way of saying she cared. But mixed in with the comfort was something else. A notification from social media. I froze before opening it. When I did, my stomach dropped. Olivia had posted a video from the restaurant. Me opening their gift. The camera zoomed in on my face, capturing the moment I tried to smile at the cheap candle. Her caption read, "Auntie pretending to love her dollar store candle while wearing a $1,000 dress. Fake, fake, fake." My cheeks burned. Another video, the drink being thrown. My gasp, my stillness. Laughter in the background. Her caption this time, "Expensive fabric, cheap soul." My fingers trembled around the phone. I whispered out loud, "She hates me. My own niece hates me." That realization hit harder than the cranberry stains. I set the phone down, stood up, and walked to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water, took a long sip, and stared at the reflection in the window. Chicago glimmered beyond the glass, the lake stretching into darkness. This city had given me everything. independence, a career, a life I built with my own two hands. And yet here I was, still chained to a family that would never see me as enough. No more, I thought. The words felt strange in my mouth, almost dangerous. No more. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and swollen eyes. I slipped the ruined dress into a garment bag, though I knew it was beyond saving. Then I sat down with my laptop and pulled up my banking app. Transaction after transaction stared back at me. Rent payments for Clara. Car repairs. Transfer after transfer labeled help or just this once. But it was never once. It was constant. Tens of thousands over the years. I scrolled further back, my chest tightening. The emergency credit card I had given Clara just in case had been used for shopping sprees, spa days, weekend trips. Olivia's car, technically mine since it was in my name for insurance purposes, was being flaunted on Instagram like a status symbol. My throat tightened. I've been paying for my own humiliation, I muttered bitterly. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I called the credit card company. Yes, I'd like to cancel an authorized user, I told the representative. My voice shook at first, but steadied as I gave Clara's name. The rep was kind, almost too kind. We'll issue you a new card number right away, Ms. Wells. The old one will be deactivated immediately. Immediately. Just like that, a drain I'd carried for years was cut off with one phone call. Next, I called a towing company. I need to arrange a vehicle retrieval, I explained. I'm the legal owner. It's currently in my niece's possession. I gave them the details, proof of registration, everything they needed. The dispatcher's voice was calm. We'll pick it up discreetly, ma'am. You'll have it back by noon. When I hung up, I let out a laugh. A sharp, incredulous laugh that startled even me. So this is what freedom feels like, just a few phone calls away. But of course, freedom doesn't come without consequences. By lunchtime, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Olivia crying into the receiver. Please, Aunt Isabella, I need the car for dance practice. I'll delete the posts. I'll be better, I promise. Her words twisted in my chest, but I forced myself to stay firm. I'm sorry, Olivia, but my decision is final. Then came Clara, her voice sharp as a knife. Are you kidding me, Isabella? You're really taking back the car? Canceling the card? After everything I've done for you? I nearly choked. After everything you've done for me, Clara, I've paid your rent, your bills, your... She cut me off with a scream. You're so selfish. Always have been. You think money makes you better than everyone else? I hung up. My hands were shaking, but for the first time, they weren't shaking out of fear. That night, I sat at my dining table, a stack of bank statements in front of me, highlighter, streaking through every payment I had made for them. It wasn't just money. It was my time, my energy, my love. And all they had given me in return was cranberry stains and cruel laughter. I looked at the numbers again. $16,000 in 5 years. That's what I had spent propping up a sister who refused to stand on her own and a niece who despised me. $16,000. I whispered the number like a curse. Never again. 6 months later, when I think back to that night, I don't remember the taste of the food or the music that played in the background. I don't even remember what my friends gave me as gifts. What I remember is the moment the cranberry liquid hit my skin, and I realized I had been bleeding out for years without even noticing. That was the night everything changed. That was the night I finally chose me. You know, when I look back now, I can't even remember a time in my life when I wasn't someone's safety net, their backup plan, the reliable one, the one they called when everything fell apart. And sometimes I wonder, did I become that person because I wanted to, or because no one else ever gave me a choice. Growing up in our little suburban house in Indiana, the roles were set early. Clara was the golden child. I was everything else. I still remember being 10 years old, practicing piano for weeks before the recital. I played with perfect precision, every note crisp and clear. When I finished, I looked up, waiting for my mother's smile, her applause, her approval. She clapped politely, barely looking at me. But then Clara walked on stage. She missed notes, stumbled through half the piece, stopped twice to start over. And when she finally reached the end, Mom jumped to her feet, clapping, cheering, as if Clara had just performed at Carnegie Hall. That was the moment I realized in my family effort mattered more than achievement. Clara's mistakes were brave attempts. My accomplishments were just expected. And Olivia? She grew up watching all of it. When I was 18, I left home with 2 suitcases and a scholarship to Northwestern. I told myself I would never depend on anyone again. I took every part-time job I could find: cafeteria worker, tutor, receptionist, anything to cover what my scholarship didn't. I slept 4 hours a night, wrote essays in between shifts, drank too much cheap coffee, and I made it. Graduation day, I stood in my cap and gown, looking out at the crowd. Mom was there, of course, but she spent most of the ceremony fussing over Clara, who was pregnant at the time. "She's so brave," Mom kept saying. "Dropping out of community college to raise her baby, that's real responsibility." I wanted to scream, "What about me?" But instead, I smiled for the photos, hugged them afterward, and listened to Mom tell everyone how strong Clara was. Chicago was supposed to be my clean break, my fresh start. I moved into a tiny studio apartment near Lakeview, furnished with secondhand furniture and a mattress on the floor. I worked my way up in marketing, starting as an unpaid intern, then an assistant, then an account coordinator. I pulled late nights at the office, brought work home on weekends, volunteered for every thankless task. Slowly, steadily, I rose. But no matter how high I climbed, Clara's calls always found me. "Nat, sorry, Isabella. Listen, the landlord's threatening eviction again. Could you just help this once I wired the money? My car broke down and Olivia has a recital. Could you send a little for repairs? I wired the money. This bill came out of nowhere. I swear it's the last time." It never was. After a while, I didn't even argue. I just paid. I thought that's what family meant, bailing each other out, even if it felt one-sided. But deep down, I knew I wasn't their sister or their daughter or their aunt. I was their ATM. 2 years ago, in a moment of weakness or maybe guilt, I added Clara to my credit card as an emergency user. I told her only for real emergencies, like if the power's about to get shut off or Olivia needs something urgent. Do you know what she spent it on? Designer handbags, weekend getaways to Florida, spa packages. Every month the statements rolled in, and every month I paid them without a word. Because every time I tried to set a boundary, Mom would guilt trip me. "She's your sister, Isabella. Family helps family. Money isn't everything." And I wanted to scream, "Then why is it always my money that fixes everything?" When Olivia turned 16, I bought her a car. Not a flashy one, but safe, reliable. Registered in my name because I was the only one who could afford the insurance. "You can use it until you graduate," I told her, handing her the keys. Her smile faltered at the word use. She wanted have, but she took the keys anyway. And later on Instagram, she posted photos with captions like "my ride" and "perks of being me." Not a single mention of me. I should have felt proud, I guess. I'd given her independence, freedom, but all I felt was used. And through it all, Mom, dear Margaret, never once acknowledged what I gave. When I earned my first big promotion to Executive Vice President of Client Relations, I called her giddy, my hands still shaking from the announcement. "That's wonderful, honey," she said. "Did I tell you Clara's thinking of taking some online classes? She's so brave." I hung up that night feeling hollow. Brave. For signing up for classes she might never take. Meanwhile, I was breaking my back to build a life and still came second. Always second. The truth is, I didn't just become their safety net by accident. I let it happen. Because some part of me kept hoping that if I gave enough money time sacrifices, they would finally see me. Finally love me the way I wanted. But all I got in return were cheap gifts, cruel words, and a cocktail spilled down the front of my dream dress. And the worst part, I let it happen. For 34 years, I let it happen. There were nights when I would lie awake in my high-rise apartment staring at the ceiling, wondering how I had ended up in this cycle. I had the career. I had the condo with a view of Lake Michigan. I had the wardrobe, the car, the paycheck that finally gave me breathing room. On paper, I looked like the definition of success. But every month, part of that paycheck slipped away to Clara's bills, to Olivia's wants, to patching up holes in a life that wasn't mine. And the cruelest irony, they never even said thank you. One night, about a year before my birthday disaster, Clara called me crying. "The rent's due tomorrow, Isabella. They're going to evict us. Please, just this once." I closed my laptop, sighed, and rubbed my temples. "Clara, you've said just this once at least 15 times this year." "Do you want your niece to be homeless?" She shot back, her voice sharp. "Do you want Olivia to sleep in a car?" My chest tightened with guilt. They knew exactly which buttons to push. "I'll transfer it," I whispered. And I did. As I pressed submit on the payment, I thought, why do I keep doing this? The answer came immediately, because I was the only one who could. But just because you can doesn't mean you should. The truth is, my relationship with money was complicated. Growing up, we never had much. Dad worked long hours at a factory, Mom stayed home. We weren't poor, but we weren't comfortable either. New clothes came from discount racks. Vacations were camping trips in borrowed tents. I told myself back then, when I grow up, I'll never have to beg for money. I'll earn my own. I'll control my own life. And I did. But somehow that control slipped through my fingers and ended up in Clara's hands. Because when family asks, how do you say no? Then there was Olivia. She had learned from the best, her mother. When she was 13, she begged me for ballet lessons in the city. "Please, Aunt Isabella," she said, eyes wide, her voice sweet as honey. "Mom can't afford it, and it's my dream." I hesitated. Those lessons cost more than my rent back when I was in college. But then Mom called me. "Don't crush her dreams, Isabella. Don't be selfish." So I wrote the check. A year later, Olivia quit ballet. "Too boring," she shrugged. No refund, no apology. Just another dream abandoned after my money had been spent. The pattern repeated itself so many times I lost count. A new phone, a trip with friends, extra dance classes, clothes for school. Every request came with the same message. If I didn't say yes, I was the bad guy, the cold aunt, the selfish sister. So I said yes, again and again. But every yes chipped away at me until I didn't recognize myself anymore. I think the moment it finally hit me was 2 years before the birthday incident. Olivia had just gotten her driver's license, and I handed her the keys to the car I bought. "Remember, you can use it until you graduate," I told her, emphasizing the word. Her face fell. She wanted ownership. She wanted me to give her thousands of dollars in metal and glass without conditions. Use not have? She repeated, her tone dripping with disappointment. I nodded firmly. Yes. Use. Later that night, I saw her Instagram post a picture of her leaning against the car, captioned, "My ride." Not a word about me. It wasn't just ungrateful. It was erasing me completely. I whispered to myself, staring at the screen. I don't exist to them unless I'm paying for something. Even Mom played her role in all of this. The week I was promoted to executive vice president, I called her, my heart soaring, ready to share my victory. "That's wonderful, honey," she said in a monotone. Then, without pausing, "Did I tell you Clara's thinking of enrolling in online classes? She's so brave." I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Brave Clara wasn't even sure she'd finish those classes. And yet, in Mom's eyes, her mere intention was more impressive than my achievement. I sat in my office that night, staring out at the Chicago skyline, wondering why I kept trying to win a game that was rigged from the start. No matter what I did, I would never be enough. So why did I keep helping them? That's the question that haunted me. The answer, I think, lies in the little girl who played the piano all those years ago. The one who waited for her mother's applause and never got it. She still lives inside me, hoping that if I give enough money support sacrifices, they'll finally clap. Finally look at me and say, "We're proud of you, Isabella." But that day never came. Instead, what I got was a 17-year-old throwing a drink in my face. Here's the part that stings the most. I can't even fully blame Clara and Olivia. Because the truth is, I trained them. I trained them to believe that if they asked, I'd give. That there would always be a safety net no matter how recklessly they lived. I taught them that my love was tied to money because that's how I kept showing it. And when you teach someone that lesson, you can't be surprised when they take advantage. But knowing that didn't make it hurt any less. Looking back now, I can see the red flags so clearly. The emergency calls that weren't emergencies. The gifts that were afterthoughts. The guilt trips from Mom. The way Clara sneered at my life, calling it easy, as if years of sacrifice meant nothing. I ignored it all because admitting the truth would mean admitting that my family didn't love me the way I wanted them to. And I wasn't ready to face that truth. Not until a cranberry cocktail forced me to. Sometimes I wonder if Olivia hadn't thrown that drink, would I still be paying their bills today? Would I still be stuck in the same cycle, bleeding out money and dignity in equal measure? Maybe. Maybe I needed that moment of public humiliation to finally wake up. Because nothing else had worked. Not logic, not boundaries, not quiet resentment. Only that cold splash of reality, literally staining the most beautiful dress I'd ever owned, finally snapped me out of it. And I hate that it took something so cruel to make me see. But maybe that's how change works. Sometimes the universe has to shake you by the shoulders and say, enough. So here I am, telling you this story, not because I enjoy reliving it, but because maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've been the reliable one, the safety net, the person who always says yes, while no one ever says thank you. And maybe like me, you've told yourself, if I give enough, they'll love me. But here's the truth. I learned the hard way. Love built on obligation isn't love. It's dependency. And the only way to break free is to stop paying for a seat at a table where you are never truly welcome. When I close my eyes now, I can still hear Olivia's voice, see her smirk, feel the icy weight of that cocktail sliding down my dress. And you know what? I'm grateful. Because that was the moment I finally stopped being their safety net. I can still feel the weight of that night pressing down on me like a stone I've been carrying in my chest ever since. My 34th birthday was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be a statement, look how far I've come, look what I've built, look who I am now. But instead, it turned into a masterclass in humiliation. The day had started with hope. I woke up to the morning sun streaming through the glass wall of my apartment. Lake Michigan glittered below the city, humming awake. I stretched in bed and whispered, "Happy birthday, Isabella. Today's the day you finally celebrate you." I spent hours getting ready. Hair styled to perfection, makeup subtle but sharp, the kind of look that took years of practice to master. And then the dress. God, the dress. Stella McCartney, cream, silk, crystal, beading at the neckline. I'd never felt more beautiful, more powerful, more seen. I took one last look in the mirror and whispered, "This is your moment. Don't let them ruin it." But deep down, I already feared they would. The restaurant was even more stunning than I remembered. Alinea wasn't just a place you went to eat, it was an experience. The walls shimmered with soft lighting. The air smelled of truffle oil and fresh herbs, and the clink of crystal glasses echoed like music. The private dining room was mine for the night. I'd booked it months in advance, even set reminders in my calendar to call the exact minute reservations opened. I wanted everything perfect. And for a moment it was. My friends arrived, first gifts in hand, smiles warm and genuine. Kate hugged me tight. "You look absolutely stunning, Izzy, like $1,000,000. Jasmine grinned. "No, like 10 million. Daniel handed me a carefully wrapped box. "We figured tonight was about celebrating the person you are, not just what you've achieved. So, this is from all of us." Inside was a framed photo collage, snapshots of our years together in Chicago. Happy hours, holiday parties, lazy Sunday brunches. Real memories, real love. Tears stung my eyes. "You guys, thank you. This means everything." For a while, everything felt right. We laughed, we toasted, we shared stories. The champagne was crisp, the food exquisite. For once, I thought, maybe I don't need their approval. Maybe this night can be mine with the people who actually love me. But then the clock ticked past 7:15. No sign of my family. "They're probably running late," I muttered, forcing a smile. But inside my stomach twisted. By 7:45, just as the second course was being set down, the door finally opened. And there they were. Clara swept in first, all attitude, tossing her hair back like she was walking a runway instead of showing up 45 minutes late to her sister's birthday. Olivia followed, glued to her phone, thumbs flying as if the world might end if she didn't post at that exact second. Mom trailed behind, expression blank, her eyes scanning the room like she was already unimpressed. "There you are," I said, standing quickly. My voice was too bright, too eager. "Traffic," Clara shrugged. "You know how it is." I wanted to scream. "No, Clara, I don't know how it is. Because when something matters, I leave early. I show up on time. I care." But all I said was, "I'm glad you're here." "Please sit." Olivia flopped into a chair, never looking up from her phone. "Nice place. Bet it cost a fortune." "It's my treat," I said softly. "Tonight's supposed to be special." "Special for who?" she muttered, but I pretended not to hear. Dinner continued, but the mood had shifted. My friends asked thoughtful questions about my new role at work, about the projects I was leading, about life in the city. Clara snorted. "Must be nice. Some of us have real responsibilities, not just fancy offices and cocktail hours." My cheeks burned. I work hard too, Clara. You know that. The table fell silent. Even the servers moved more carefully as if afraid to interrupt. Then came the gifts. My friends went first. Beautifully wrapped packages, thoughtful touches. Kate gave me a journal embossed with my initials. Jasmine, a delicate necklace that sparkled under the candlelight. Daniel, a box of rare teas he knew I loved. Each gift was accompanied by hugs, laughter words that warmed me from the inside. Then Clara reached into a plastic shopping bag and shoved it across the table. Inside was a candle-cheap clearance tag still attached the words, "Final Sale," stamped in red. "Happy birthday," she said flatly. I froze for a second, then forced a smile. "Thank you. It's lovely." Olivia smirked. "Pretend harder, Aunt Isabella. Maybe we'll believe you actually like it." My friends exchanged uneasy glances. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole, but it only got worse. Olivia finally looked up from her phone, eyes gleaming with something sharp, cruel. "You know what's funny?" she said, voice loud enough for the entire room to hear. "You sit here in your fancy dress in this fancy restaurant, acting like you're better than everyone, but you're not. You're just sitting on a pile of money while we struggle." "Olivia," I said quietly, "that's not fair." Clara's eyes narrowed. "It's true, though. While I was working double shifts while Mom was remortgaging the house, you were living it up in Chicago." "You think we don't notice?" My throat closed. "That's not what happened. I've helped." Helped Olivia cut me off, her voice dripping venom. She picked up her glass of cranberry cocktail, gripping it so tightly, her knuckles turned white. "You want to know what I think of your help? You want to know what I think of your stupid dress and your fake life?" And before I could move, she flung the drink forward. Red liquid exploded across the table, splattering my dress, soaking the silk, dripping onto the white tablecloth like blood. The room gasped. My friends froze. The servers stared wide-eyed, unsure what to do. And Olivia smirked. "Now you look as cheap as you really are." Time slowed. I felt the icy liquid seep into my skin, the weight of every eye in the room pressing down on me. My chest burned, my hands trembled, my heart thundered so loud I thought I might faint. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw the glass back, to finally unleash every ounce of anger I had bottled up for years. Another part of me wanted to run, to disappear, to crawl into bed and never come out. Instead, I did what I always did. I swallowed my pride, steadied my voice, and said, "Thank you for coming. That's all." My family stood up, gathered their things, and walked out heads high, as if they had won something. I sat there drenched and humiliated, surrounded by friends who didn't know how to comfort me. The restaurant buzzed with whispers, strangers staring like I was part of some tragic play. And in that moment, I realized this was my breaking point. No more safety net. No more sacrifices. No more begging for scraps of love. That night, the birthday celebration collapsed. But maybe it needed to, because sometimes things have to break completely before you finally decide to rebuild. When the door closed behind my family, the silence they left was deafening. The kind of silence that screamed louder than any words ever could. I sat there soaked in cranberry, the silk of my dress clinging to me like a second skin. My friends hovered, their faces torn between outrage and pity. Kate reached across the table, her voice soft. "Izzy, are you okay?" I forced a smile. My lips trembled, but I held it together. "I'm fine, really." But I wasn't fine. I was humiliated, shattered. I dabbed at my dress with a napkin, knowing it was useless. The stain had already spread, blooming across the fabric like an open wound. Inside, something cracked. Something that had been straining for years, finally giving way under the weight of disappointment. The rest of the dinner passed in a haze. My friends tried to salvage the evening, keeping the conversation light, but I could barely hear them. My mind was somewhere else, spiraling through memories of every time I'd been overlooked, dismissed, used. The piano recital when Mom clapped louder for Clara's mistakes than for my perfect performance. The graduation day, where my degree was ignored in favor of Clara's pregnancy. The promotions that were met with silence, while Clara's smallest efforts were praised as brave. And now this. A cocktail thrown in my face, a lifetime of resentment distilled into one humiliating act. When dessert came untouched, I excused myself. "Thank you all for being here," I whispered. "But I think I need to go home." Kate hugged me tight. "You don't deserve this?" "None of it." I nodded, blinking back tears. "I know. At least now I know." Back home, I didn't even change out of the ruined dress. I dropped my purse on the couch, kicked off my heels, and collapsed into the cushions. The city lights twinkled through the window, but all I saw was Olivia's smirk. All I heard was Clara's sneer. All I felt was Mom's silence. I grabbed my phone out of habit, hoping for distraction. But what I found made my blood run cold. Notifications from social media. Olivia had posted videos from the dinner. The first one was me opening their gift. The camera zoomed in on my forced smile as I held up the cheap candle, the clearance sticker glaring in the corner. The caption read, "Auntie pretending to love her dollar store candle while wearing a $1,000 dress. Fake, fake, fake." The second was the moment the cocktail hit me. Gasps in the background, my stunned face frozen in shock. The caption, "Expensive fabric, cheap soul." I dropped the phone onto the couch, covering my face with my hands. "My own niece," I whispered. "She hates me that much." Tears finally came hot and relentless, blurring the city lights outside my window. Hours passed. My phone buzzed again, this time with messages from my friends. "Are you okay?" That was inexcusable. "Don't let them do this to you anymore." Their words were kind, but they couldn't drown out the truth. The truth was, I had allowed this. For years, I had poured money, time, and energy into a family that never once respected me. I had paid for their rent, their cars, their bills, their dreams. And what had I gotten in return? Disdain. Mockery. A cocktail to the chest. Something inside me hardened. Enough. The next morning, I woke up with puffy eyes and a pounding head. I slipped the dress into a garment bag, though I knew it was ruined. Then I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up my bank records. The numbers stared back at me, cold and undeniable. $16,000 over the past 5 years. Transfers labeled help. Charges on the credit card for spa trips, designer bags. Restaurants Clara couldn't afford on her own. I whispered the number out loud like a curse. $16,000. That's how much I had spent buying myself a seat at a table where I was never truly wanted. I grabbed my phone and called the credit card company. "I need to remove an authorized user," I said, my voice steady now. Clara's name rolled off my tongue like a release. The rep was polite. "We'll cancel the card immediately, Ms. Wells. You'll receive a new number in the mail." Just like that, a door closed. Next, I called a towing company. "I need a vehicle retrieved," I explained. "It's registered in my name. My niece has been driving it." The dispatcher didn't ask questions. "We'll have it back to you by noon, ma'am." When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Of course they called. Olivia first sobbing. Please, Aunt Isabella, I need the car for dance. I'll delete the posts. I'll be better. Don't do this. Her words stabbed at me, but I stayed firm. I'm sorry, Olivia. My decision is final. Then Clara, her voice full of rage. Are you kidding me, Isabella? After everything I've done for you? You're taking back the car, canceling the card? You're unbelievable. I laughed bitterly. Everything you've done for me? Clara, all you've done is take. She screamed something I couldn't even make out before hanging up. But I didn't cry. Not this time. For once, I felt free. That night, I laid out the bank statements on my dining table. I highlighted every payment, every transfer, every so-called favor. It wasn't just money. It was years of my life. Years of sacrificing my peace of mind, my dignity, my joy. And for what? For a candle from the clearance rack. For a cocktail stain on a $3,000 dress. For a lifetime of being treated as if I was never enough. I stared at the paper's tears drying on my cheeks and whispered, no more. Looking back now, I realized that the birthday dinner had to collapse. It was the breaking point I needed the moment everything shattered, so I could finally see the truth. Because sometimes it takes a public humiliation, a wound you can't ignore, to make you wake up. And though it hurt more than I can put into words, I am grateful. Because that night, I stopped begging for scraps of love. That night, I finally chose myself. And once you choose yourself, you never go back. I never thought freedom could come with just a phone call. But that morning, after canceling Clara's credit card and arranging for the car to be towed back to me, I felt something shift. For the first time in years, I was no longer their safety net. No longer their endless supply. And yet the moment the adrenaline faded, guilt came rushing in. You're abandoning them, a voice in my head whispered. You're turning your back on your family. Who will help them now? I paced my apartment, staring out at the skyline. Chicago gleamed in the morning sun, indifferent to my crisis. I wanted to believe I was doing the right thing, but decades of conditioning don't vanish overnight. I poured myself coffee, sat at the dining table, and spread out the papers again. Bank statements, credit card bills, transfers. Every dollar I'd given them stared back at me in black and white. $16,000. I whispered the number again, as if saying it out loud might make it more real. 16,000. And for what? For being humiliated in public. For having my achievements dismissed. For being treated like I didn't matter. I took a deep breath and said the words that terrified me. It ends now. By noon, the car was back in my building's garage. The tow truck driver handed me the keys with a sympathetic smile. Kids, huh? They don't always appreciate what they've got. I forced a laugh, something like that. But inside, I was trembling. Not from fear this time, but from resolve. I went upstairs, poured myself a glass of water, and stared at my phone. It buzzed nonstop calls from Clara, texts from Olivia, even a few from Mom. I ignored them all. Instead, I dialed a different number. Janet, it's Isabella. I need to move up our quarterly review, today if possible. My financial advisor had been after me for years to cut back on family expenses. I always brushed her off embarrassed, but not this time. When Janet arrived that afternoon, she sat across from me with her laptop, her eyes kind but firm. You're ready, aren't you? I nodded. I am. Show me everything. She clicked a few buttons, and my financial history appeared on the screen. A neat spreadsheet of generosity or stupidity, depending on how you looked at it. In the past 5 years, she said, you've transferred just over $16,000 directly to Clara and her household. That's not counting the credit card charges, which add another $9,000. Total about $25,000. My stomach dropped. 25. She turned the screen so I could see. Every penny, all documented. I leaned back, covering my face with my hands. 25,000. That wasn't just money. It was vacations I never took home. Renovations I put off. Peace of mind I sacrificed. Janet's voice softened. Isabella, you've been carrying them for years. It's no wonder you feel drained. This isn't generosity anymore. It's exploitation. The word hit hard, but it was true. Exploitation. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, the papers still spread across the table. I knew I couldn't just cut them off silently. If I did, they'd paint me as the villain, the selfish sister, the cold-hearted aunt. No, I needed to face them. I needed to say the words out loud, I'm done. So, I sent the text. Come to my apartment tomorrow at 3. We need to talk. All of you. Almost immediately, Clara replied. Fine. Olivia sent nothing. Mom's response was just one word. Okay. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. Tomorrow, everything would change. The next day, I prepared like I was going into battle. I printed out the financial statements. I organized the receipts, the credit card bills, the screenshots of Olivia's posts mocking me. I laid them all out on the dining table like evidence in a courtroom. This wasn't a social visit. This was a reckoning. At 2:55, my building's security called. Ms. Wells, there are 3 visitors here for you. Clara, Olivia, and Margaret. My heart pounded. Send them up. Moments later, there was a knock, 3 sharp raps, impatient and demanding. I opened the door and stood tall. Come in. They filed in, Clara storming ahead, Olivia trailing behind with arms crossed, Mom in the middle, looking already exhausted. What is this about? Clara snapped. I gestured to the table. Sit, all of you. Reluctantly, they did. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had the upper hand. I slid the first folder across the table. These are my bank records. They show every transfer I've made to you in the past 5 years. Rent bills, emergencies. The total comes to just over $16,000. Add in the credit card charges and we're at $25,000. Clara's face paled. That can't be right. It's all here, I said firmly. Every dollar. Every cent. Olivia shifted uncomfortably, arms tightening across her chest. Mom just stared at the papers, lips pressed together. And this, I said, pulling out my tablet, is how you've repaid me. I tapped the screen and up popped Olivia's social media posts. The candle video, the cocktail video, the captions mocking me for the world to see. I turned the tablet so they couldn't avoid it. No one spoke. Finally, Clara muttered, it was just a joke. My laugh was sharp. Deliberately humiliating me in public isn't a joke. Posting videos mocking me isn't a joke. It's cruelty, and I'm done tolerating it. Olivia's eyes flickered, fear breaking through her teenage bravado. But she said nothing. Mom finally spoke. Isabella, I understand you're upset, but this response feels extreme. Extreme, I shot back. What's extreme is me paying $25,000 while being treated like garbage. What's extreme is my niece throwing a drink in my face and being comforted instead of corrected. What's extreme is decades of being second place in my own family. The words rang through the apartment heavier than I expected, and for once, none of them had an immediate comeback. I stood gathering the papers into a neat stack. My hands were steady now. I've made my decision, I said. I will no longer provide financial support. The credit card is canceled. The car is back in my possession. Going forward, you will need to manage your own expenses like adults. Clara's mouth opened, but I raised a hand. Don't. I've heard every excuse, every sob story. I'm done. Olivia finally spoke, her voice cracking. So you're just cutting us off? You're done with us? I softened slightly. I'm not done with you. I'm done being your ATM. I'm done being disrespected. I'm done sacrificing myself for nothing. The room fell silent again, and for the first time, I felt free. The silence stretched heavy and suffocating. For years, I had been the one scrambling to fill it, apologizing, backpedaling, explaining. But not this time. I let it hang there, let them feel the weight of it. Finally, Clara slammed her hand on the table. This is ridiculous, Isabella. You can't just abandon us. Rent is due next week. I can't make it without your help. I folded my hands calmly in my lap. Then you'll need to figure something out. Get a second job. Find a roommate. Negotiate with your landlord. That's what adults do. Her face flushed crimson. So that's it. You're just going to watch your own sister sink. I leaned forward, my voice low but steady. Clara, I've spent years throwing you life rafts, but you don't use them to swim, you use them to drift. And I'm done watching you drown yourself while pulling me under too. Her mouth opened, then shut again. She didn't have a response. Olivia finally spoke, her teenage defiance cracked by a hint of desperation. What about my dance classes? What about college? I softened slightly. The college fund still exists. It's in a trust that you'll have access to when you enroll. But the extras, the classes, the trips, the luxuries, that's on you now. Her eyes widened. So you're not taking away the college money? No. That was always for your education, and it still will be. But everything else that ends today. Tears welled in her eyes, though whether from fear or anger I couldn't tell. So, you really mean it? You're cutting us off. I nodded. Yes, I mean it. Mom finally broke her silence, her voice tinged with disappointment. Isabella, I raised you to value family, to understand that we take care of each other. What happened to that? My laugh was bitter. What happened? 34 years of me giving and giving while never being enough. That's what happened. You raised me to take care of everyone else, but who was taking care of me? She flinched as if the truth had physically struck her. For years, I continued. I thought if I gave enough, you'd finally see me. You'd finally be proud. But all I ever got was comparisons to Clara. Dismissals, excuses. And when Olivia humiliated me in public, you comforted her instead of standing up for me. That was my breaking point. Mom's lips trembled, but she didn't argue. Clara tried again, her tone shifting from anger to pleading. Izzy, please. Just until I get back on my feet. You can't expect us to survive without your help. Yes, I can, I said firmly. Because that's how the rest of us survive, by working, by budgeting, by taking responsibility. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's life, and it's time you started living it. Her eyes filled with tears, but for once, I didn't cave. The conversation dragged on, full of accusations, half-hearted apologies, desperate bargaining, but my answers never changed. No, it ends now. I'm done. With every repetition, I felt stronger. Finally, Clara stood her chair, scraping back violently. Fine. If that's how it's going to be, then don't come crawling back when you realize you need us. I almost laughed at the irony. Clara, I've never needed you. You've always needed me. She faltered, then turned toward the door. Olivia lingered, her eyes searching mine one last time. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. I met her gaze. I know. But you did, and now we all have to live with that. She dropped her eyes and followed her mother out. Mom hesitated, her hand on the doorframe. Isabella? I don't know how to fix this. I sighed. You can start by admitting it was broken. And then we'll see. She nodded slowly, then left. The apartment was silent again, but this time it felt different. Not suffocating, not lonely, just peaceful. I gathered the papers, stacked them neatly, and slid them into a drawer. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I felt like I was finally learning to swim. The weeks that followed were strange. Clara's angry voicemails eventually gave way to silence. Olivia stopped posting about me, though. I caught glimpses of her carless life on social media, taking buses, asking friends for rides. And Mom? Mom called once a week cautiously, as if testing the waters. At first, the guilt gnawed at me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, hearing that old voice in my head. You're abandoning them. You're cruel. But then I'd remind myself they weren't abandoned. They were finally being forced to stand on their own. And little by little, the guilt gave way to something else. Relief. One evening, Kate came over with a bottle of wine. We sat on the balcony, the city lights twinkling around us. You seem lighter, she observed. I smiled, sipping my glass. I think I am. For the first time, I'm not carrying everyone else's weight. She nodded. It's about time. You deserve to live your own life, Izzy. Her words warmed me in a way money never could. Months later, Clara got a better job. Olivia adjusted, focused on her college applications. Even Mom began to reflect slowly on her role in everything. And me, I kept moving forward. Stronger, clearer, free. Because the night I decided to cut them off wasn't just about money. I never thought I'd see the day when I'd be dreading a family wedding. Weddings are supposed to be joyful white dresses, champagne toasts, promises of forever. But as I slipped into my seat on the airplane bound for our hometown, I knew this one would be different. This was Clara's big day. My older sister, the one who had leaned on me for years, who had turned me into her personal safety net, was finally walking down the aisle. And she had insisted, no, demanded that I be there. Your family, she'd said on the phone, her voice sharp as ever. No excuses. You will be at my wedding. Part of me wanted to refuse outright. After everything, the birthday humiliation, the financial exploitation, the endless years of being treated as less, I didn't owe her a thing. But another part of me knew this was my chance. My chance to show them, all of them, that I wasn't the same Isabella anymore. That I was done being the quiet one, the doormat, the invisible sister. This time, they would see me. The wedding was held at a country club just outside our hometown. Expensive, but not elegant, flashy, but not refined. It suited Clara perfectly. As I walked into the lobby, heads turned. Not because I was late or because I was out of place, but because of the dress I wore. It wasn't Stella McCartney, not this time. I'd chosen something different, a deep emerald gown, fitted but graceful, shimmering under the lights. It wasn't just beautiful, it was armor. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and whispered, "Tonight, you fight back." The ceremony itself was uneventful. Clara beamed in her lace gown, her new husband sweating nervously beside her. Vows were exchanged, rings slipped on fingers, the crowd clapped dutifully. But it was the reception where the real battle began. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, the band played upbeat jazz, and waiters circulated with trays of champagne. Guests mingled, laughed, posed for photos. And then there was me, seated of all places at the kitchen-adjacent table. I blinked when I saw the place card. My name, Isabella Wells, written neatly tucked between Cousin Marlene and Great Aunt Judith. Both lovely women, but neither exactly the inner circle. I stared, heat rising in my chest. They had put me, the sister of the bride, the one who had bankrolled Clara's life for years, next to the swinging doors of the kitchen, where servers rushed in and out carrying trays of food. The smell of garlic butter wafted over me as a busboy nearly knocked into my chair. I clenched my jaw. So this is how it's going to be. Kate's voice echoed in my head. Don't let one bad night rob you of celebrations forever. Just do it differently this time. Well, Kate, this wasn't exactly what I had in mind. I sat spine straight, forcing myself to smile as guests passed by. Some stopped to chat politely. Others glanced at my table assignment and quickly moved along, their eyes flickering with pity. I wanted to scream, to demand, "How dare you put me here? How dare you treat me like an afterthought?" But instead, I sipped my champagne and waited. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet, calculated, surgical. And tonight, I wasn't here to be their victim. I was here to remind them who I was. Dinner was served, and conversation at my table was light, even pleasant. Marlene chatted about her grandchildren, Judith reminisced about family reunions from decades ago. I nodded, politely answered when addressed, but my eyes kept drifting to the head table. There sat Clara, radiant in her gown, basking in the attention. Olivia sat beside her, smug as ever, snapping photos and posting them instantly. Mom hovered at the edge, glowing with pride, as though she herself were being celebrated. And me, I was the sister in the shadows. Again, but not for long. Halfway through dinner, the microphone crackled to life. The best man gave a predictable speech, stories from college, inside jokes. No one else understood, a toast to eternal love. Then the maid of honor, one of Clara's friends, delivered her tearful tribute. Finally, the DJ announced, "And now we invite the bride's sister Isabella to say a few words." My fork froze mid-air. I hadn't been asked to prepare anything. Clara certainly hadn't told me I'd be speaking. This was a setup, a chance for me to stumble, to make a fool of myself in front of everyone. I glanced toward the head table. Clara's smirk confirmed it. My heart raced. My palms sweated. For a split second, the old Isabella, the one who swallowed her pain, who played the role they assigned her, wanted to shrink back and decline. But then I remembered the cranberry cocktail dripping down my dress. I remembered the clearance candle shoved across the table. I remembered every dismissal, every humiliation, every time I was made small. And I stood. The room hushed as I walked to the microphone. My emerald gown shimmered under the lights, my heels clicking against the marble floor. I took the mic, smiled at the crowd, and said, "Good evening, everyone. I wasn't expecting to speak tonight, but I suppose that's fitting. Because for most of my life, I've had to speak up when no one expected me to." A ripple of curiosity swept the room. Clara's smirk faltered. I continued. Being Clara's sister has been an experience. She's always been the star of the show. And I was the background. The one who made sure the bills got paid. The one who kept the lights on. The one who caught her when she fell. Invisible, maybe, but essential. Gasps and murmurs echoed around the room. Mom shifted uncomfortably. I leaned closer to the mic, my voice steady. Tonight isn't just about celebrating Clara. It's about truth. And the truth is, sometimes the people you lean on the hardest are the ones you treat the worst. The silence was electric. Every eye was on me, and for the first time, I felt seen. The silence after my words hung thick, heavier than the chandeliers glittering above. For once, Every pair of eyes in that room, strangers, family, guests, was on me. I swallowed, steadied my breath, and let the words come. I've spent years being the dependable one, the one who bailed out late rent, who bought cars, who made sure dance recitals weren't missed. I did it all quietly because I thought that's what family meant. But what I learned is this family doesn't mean draining one person until they have nothing left to give. Family is supposed to mean respect. And without respect, there is no family. A ripple of gasps echoed across the ballroom. I caught sight of Olivia, her phone forgotten in her lap, her face pale. Clara's smile was gone completely now, her lips tight, her eyes daggers. I kept going. I wasn't supposed to say this tonight. I wasn't even supposed to be seen. But here's the thing, I'm done being invisible. A murmur swept through the crowd. Some guests whispered, others nodded subtly. A few even clapped softly. I could feel the shift the air charged, people leaning in. "Clara, I wish you happiness," I said, turning to face her directly. "Truly, I do. But happiness can't be built on the backs of people you've dismissed. It can't last if you pretend the ones who carried you don't exist. So tonight, let me make this clear, not as your sister, not as your safety net, but as my own person. I'm stepping out of the shadows. I'm reclaiming my place." The microphone trembled slightly in my hands, but my voice was steady, clear. I raised my glass. "To new beginnings. For you, Clara, and for me." And with that, I drank. The crowd erupted, not thunderous applause, but enough clapping and murmurs of agreement to drown out Clara's glare. I placed the mic back on its stand and walked back to my seat. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might faint, but inside I felt lighter, free. Guests I barely knew patted my arm as I passed some whispering, "Good for you," or that needed to be said. For once, I wasn't the one people pitied. I wasn't the one people overlooked. I was the one who spoke truth. The rest of the evening unfolded in fragments. Clara barely looked at me, her smile forced in photos. Mom avoided my eyes altogether. Olivia sulked, glaring daggers, but her usual smirk was gone. But the other guests, they treated me differently. Some came up to chat, curious, respectful. Others gave small nods of solidarity from across the room. It wasn't victory in the traditional sense. I hadn't won, but I hadn't lost either. For the first time at a family gathering, I had refused to be small, and that was enough. Later, as I slipped on my coat in the lobby, an older woman approached me. Great Aunt Judith, still spry despite her age, her eyes sharp with wisdom. "You did the right thing, dear," she said softly. "Sometimes the only way to get through to family is to stop letting them walk over you." I wish I had learned that sooner. Her words landed deep. I smiled, hugging her gently. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." She patted my cheek. "You'll be fine. Strong women always find their way." On the plane back to Chicago the next morning, I replayed the night in my head. Part of me worried, had I gone too far? Had I humiliated Clara on her wedding day? But another part, louder now, insisted no. The truth needed to be said. And if not, then when I glanced out the window at the clouds below the sun breaking through. For years I had let myself be cast in the role of the background sister, the invisible one, the quiet one who carried everyone else. But not anymore. At the wedding, in front of everyone, I had drawn the line. I wasn't just Clara's sister. I wasn't just Olivia's aunt. I was Isabella Wells, and I was done being forgotten. When the plane touched down, my phone buzzed with notifications. Some were texts from friends who had heard what happened through the grapevine, encouragement, pride, even admiration. Others were from family. Mom, we'll talk when you're calmer. Clara, you ruined my wedding. Don't ever contact me again. Olivia, dramatic. Much, you just love attention. I read them all, then set the phone down. For once, their words didn't cut, because deep down, I knew last night I had taken back my power. And no text, no glare, no silence could take that away. That night, back in my apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood by the window. The city glowed beneath me, alive and indifferent, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small against it. I felt big enough. I whispered to my reflection, "You did it. You finally stood up." And with that, I smiled, truly smiled, because the counterattack had begun, and I wasn't done yet. When the noise of the wedding finally faded into memory, I found myself back in Chicago, standing alone in my apartment, staring out at the lake. The skyline glowed with its usual indifference, the waves of Lake Michigan crashing softly against the shore, steady and unbothered by human drama. And yet inside me, something seismic had shifted. For the first time in my life, I had spoken without permission. I had told the truth, not the polite version, not the watered-down narrative to keep the peace, but the raw truth of my existence, and it felt terrifying and liberating. The days after the wedding were quiet. My phone buzzed a few times, Clara's angry texts, Mom's half-hearted attempts at guilt, Olivia's sarcastic jabs, but I ignored them all. Instead, I found myself journaling. At first, just a few lines each morning, what I felt, what I feared, what I hoped. But soon the words poured out faster than I could write, pages filled with confessions I had never said out loud. I spent years trying to earn love that was never meant for me. I confused obligation with devotion. I let guilt dictate my choices until I was hollowed out. Every page felt like peeling away another layer of armor I'd carried since childhood. I started walking along the lake in the mornings. The cold air bit at my cheeks, the waves slapped against the breakwater, and for once, the rhythm of the city matched the rhythm of my heart. I thought about Clara, how easily she had taken from me, how quickly she had dismissed me. But deeper than anger, I felt something else, sadness. Sadness for the years, wasted for the closeness we never had, for the sisterhood I had always wanted, but never received. I thought about Mom, the way her love was always conditional, always tilted toward Clara, always shrinking me to fit the role of the reliable one. I wondered if she even realized what she had done, or if denial was easier than accountability. And I thought about Olivia, a child when all this began, a teenager caught in the cycles of entitlement and bitterness. Did she even know what she had done to me? Or was she just echoing what she had been taught? The truth was, each of them had hurt me, but I had let them. That was the hardest truth of all. Late one night, unable to sleep, I sat by the window with a cup of tea and whispered to the glass. Why did I think I needed their approval to matter? The city outside had no answer, but the silence in my apartment held one, because you never learned how to approve of yourself. I leaned my head against the cool glass and closed my eyes. For years, I had measured my worth through them. Every dollar I gave, every sacrifice I made, every insult I swallowed, I told myself it was proof that I was valuable, proof that I deserved a seat at the table. But now, I saw the truth. I had always deserved that seat, even if they never offered it. Therapy had been something I'd avoided for years, too busy, too expensive, too vulnerable. But after the wedding, I booked my first appointment. Sitting across from Dr. Harris, a calm woman with kind eyes and a habit of letting silence do the heavy lifting, I found myself unraveling. I don't even know who I am without them. I confessed one session. So much of my life has been tied to Clara, to Mom, to Olivia. If I stop giving, if I stop helping, if I stop being needed, then what's left of me? Dr. Harris tilted her head. Maybe that's the question you've been avoiding all these years. Who are you, Isabella, when no one is taking from you? The question haunted me. For weeks, I rolled it over in my mind. Who was I really? Not the provider, not the scapegoat, not the forgotten sister. Just me. The thought was both terrifying and thrilling. I began to remember small things I had buried. How I loved photography, the way light hit buildings at dusk. How I used to paint in college colors bleeding together until they made sense of feelings I couldn't name. How I once dreamed of traveling, not the rushed business trips, but slow, lingering journeys where I could lose myself in a new city and not feel guilty for it. These pieces of me had been left behind, sacrificed on the altar of family obligation. And now, for the first time, I felt free to pick them back up. One Saturday, I pulled out my old camera, dusted off the lens, and wandered the city. I took photos of street performers, of children chasing pigeons in the park, of the way sunlight bounced off skyscrapers. Looking through the viewfinder, I felt a spark I hadn't felt in years. A reminder that beauty existed, that life could be captured and savored, that I could see the world in my own way. And it wasn't just photography. I signed up for a painting class. I booked a weekend trip to Seattle just because I wanted to. I started cooking meals for myself, not quick bites between work and family crises, but meals I lingered over, meals I enjoyed. Each act felt radical, as though I was breaking some unspoken contract, but no one stopped me. The only one who had ever held me back was me. One evening, I lit a candle, not the cheap one Clara had given me, but a beautiful one I'd picked out for myself, and sat down with my journal. I wrote, maybe the meaning of this story isn't about revenge. Maybe it's about freedom. Maybe it's about finally giving myself the love I kept begging from them. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I closed the journal, leaned back, and let the weight of that truth sink in. Because maybe the point wasn't what I had lost. Maybe the point was what I had finally found. The weeks stretched into months, and slowly my life began to feel different. Not because my family had changed, but because I had. The Isabella who once bent under the weight of everyone else's needs was gone. In her place was someone new, someone who no longer apologized for existing. One Sunday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Mom. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but then I thought of Dr. Harris's question. Who are you when no one is taking from you? I answered. Her voice was hesitant, softer than I remembered. Isabella, how are you? I almost laughed. It was such a simple question, yet one she'd rarely asked, without it being a prelude to Clara's latest crisis. I'm good, Mom, I said, and I meant it. Silence hung for a beat before she spoke again. I've been thinking a lot since the wedding. I braced myself. You were right, she whispered. I didn't protect you. I didn't see you. I don't know how to fix that, but I want to try. Tears filled my eyes. For so long I had wanted to hear those words, and yet they didn't land the way I thought they would. They didn't heal me instantly. They didn't erase the years. But they mattered. And maybe, just maybe, they were a beginning. Clara didn't call. Weeks turned into months, and still nothing. At first, that silence hurt more than her insults ever had. But with time, I realized it wasn't punishment. It was peace. Sometimes distance is the only boundary people understand. Olivia, surprisingly, was the one who reached out. It happened on a rainy evening, my phone buzzing with a number I didn't recognize. Aunt Isabella. Her voice was small, uncertain. Yes, I said cautiously. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For the drink. For the posts. For all of it. I sat in stunned silence. I didn't get it, she continued. I thought you were just showing off that your life was easy. But I see now it wasn't easy. You worked for it. And I was cruel. I'm sorry. Her words cracked something in me. Not the old wound it would never fully close, but the hardness I'd built around it. Thank you, Olivia, I whispered. That means more than you know. Healing wasn't a straight line. Some days I still felt the old guilt creeping in. Some nights I dreamed of Clara's contempt, Mom's dismissal, Olivia's smirk. But I was learning to remind myself I had chosen differently now. I was no longer the woman who begged for scraps of love. I was the woman who created love for herself. One night, sitting at my kitchen table with a glass of wine, I tried to put it into words. The meaning of my story isn't that I finally won against my family. It isn't that I got the last word at a wedding, or that I cut off their money. It's that I stopped betraying myself. For years, I abandoned myself in the name of loyalty. And now, I choose me. That's the real victory. I read the words aloud, letting them settle in the air. They sounded foreign at first, but truer each time I said them. Months later, when my next birthday arrived, I didn't throw a lavish dinner. I didn't book an exclusive restaurant or buy an expensive dress. I hosted a small gathering in my apartment. Just friends, the family I had chosen. We ate home-cooked food, laughed until our stomachs hurt, and when they brought out a simple cake with candles, I felt more celebrated than I ever had before. As I blew out the candles, I didn't wish for love or recognition or approval. I wished for the courage to keep choosing myself. Sometimes I still walk along the lake and think about what I lost. The sisterhood that never was. The mother-daughter bond that was fractured. The innocence of believing family meant safety. But then, I think about what I gained. Self-respect. Boundaries. Peace. And I know deep down that those things matter more than any approval ever could.